Welcome back to the Echoes of Fear with Jason Hewlett and Kenton J. Moore. This week, Kenton, we're going over a fear that I think for me started when first memory I can remember, because I had wallpaper in my kids' room with these bastards on it. We're talking about coulrophobia, and what is that?
Coulrophobia, indeed, the fear of clowns. Why so serious?
That was frightening, actually. Kind of creeped out by that. So
I practiced a lot.
I can tell. No, you nailed it, because you went right from like Heath Ledger's Joker into like Krusty the Clown, and that was well done, sir. And this is a fear I think a lot of people have. Like we're sort of starting off with like the broader fears, like our last couple episodes was about fear of the dark, that kind of thing. Fear of clowns is very common. We've got like arachnophobia coming up about spiders, and thalassophobia, fear of deep water, etc. What, and you being the researcher you are, you've put a lot of effort into digging into the history of this. So where did this kind of start and why?
Yeah. So that's actually super fascinating here. So coulrophobia actually didn't get its name until the 1990s. Like it's extremely modern. However, clowns themselves, jesters and court jesters and stuff, they date back to 2500 BC, all the way back to when they were entertaining Egyptian pharaohs and stuff in the courtrooms. But it wasn't until the 1990s that coulrophobia was given its name. Interestingly, the coulro actually comes from the Greek word for stilt walker.
Stilt walker?
Yeah, like it's all to do with carnival folk and entertainers and stuff. Of course, phobia being the persistent and irrational fear of a specific object. So in the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, coulrophobia actually isn't listed as a phobia. However, it falls under what's called specific phobias. So phobias of a specific item.
That's interesting. Like when you talk about the stilt walkers, a lot of stilt walkers, from my experience, dress up almost like clowns. And then now you've got this freaky dude in makeup, about 8 feet tall, wandering around. So I could see why that would be frightening.
Right? It's, like distended limbs and all sorts of creepy stuff. It's unsettling. And, it's understanding how those things would be creepy. But fun fact, the English actor Joseph Grimaldi, who died in 1837, is actually responsible for creating the modern version of clowns that we know today, with those bouncy attitudes and all the colorful makeup and the big hair and everything like that. So, like, historically speaking, the humor for clowns and jesters and stilt walkers and all that is based on trickery and mischief, which I think probably leads to their reputation for distrust.
Yeah, I can see that. And they kind of began, didn't they, in a sense, as like the court gestures in medieval times. And they were the same thing. They were kind of, they played pranks on people. They made fun of people, a bunch of things that people generally don't like to have done to them.
Yeah, and I mean, even think like modern day representations, which we'll get into in part 2, pop culture stuff. That idea of the clown, think of rodeo clowns. Their whole idea is to distract the bull and protect the cowboys that jump off their horses. Or, you think of circuses that, the clowns come out and they entertain the audience in between the parts of the show. And they're meant to distract. They're meant to be unpredictable. They're meant to be unsettling and distracting, and you don't really know what they're about to do.
And and that's what makes, I think anything scary is that fear of the unknown, not understanding what could happen to you next. We talked in our last couple episodes when we were talking about fear of the dark, like the character Michael Myers from the Halloween films was given a blank slate white mask. You then had no idea what, which is in ways kind of a clownish appearance, because clowns generally paint their face up white. So you have no idea what is they're thinking about, what they're going to do next. And we don't like that. What I find interesting with clowns is people associate them with being like a children's thing. Like they're there to entertain children. But I don't know any child, myself included, that wasn't scared of clowns.
Yeah, and again, more fun facts I found during my research about that exactly is, coulrophobia not being so prevalent until the 90s meant that there's not a lot of studies on the fear of clowns, despite the fact that it's well known that humanity is unsettled by them, and for a myriad of reasons. There was only ever studies conducted recently is 2016. The most notable study in 2016 was an interview of over 1,400 children at a hospital in the United States, and 1 in 10 of them were like terrifyingly afraid of the clowns that visited them on the floor. And what's fascinating about that research too, and I read the paper, is a shocking majority, like 75 to 80% of the people that had phobic reactions, like stress reactions, were assigned female at birth.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Did they know why? Did they have any correlation to that?
The study says that it needs more like in-depth analysis and stuff, but they find that, a lot of the phobia of clowns existed in people that had other specific phobias as well.
Okay, well, that makes sense. So people that are more prone to having something frightening go on. But that's really interesting, though, that the majority of the people, or like 1 in 10, that's a lot. That's a pretty high number when you think about it.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting for sure to think that 1 in 10 people that are afraid of clowns. And I thought about it all week this week, and I was messaging friends of mine, and I'm like asking everybody, are you afraid of clowns? Are you afraid of clowns? And you know what? The answer I got predominantly was, I don't like them, but I'm not afraid of them. But I did find 3 of my close friend group, my daughter's roommate, a girl that I used to work with at Horse Barn, and a guy that I sail with in the Navy are actually like terrified of them, like phobic of them. They have stress reactions. They have panic disorder, an overwhelming need to run away. Then even talking to my daughter's roommate about it was upsetting her.
That's interesting. I mean, we're going to kind of talk a bit about what could be influencing that in our modern times, like you said, pop culture on the next episode. Because as we mentioned previously, first episode, like all these topics are 2-parters. First part is the academic side of things, the historical side of things. The second part is the pop culture side of things that kind of keeps these phobias going, and why people like to play around with them. So Ken, what have there been kind of big trigger points in the kind of history of clowns where this has kind of become even more prevalent, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So coulrophobia getting its prevalence, getting the attention that it's been getting, comes entirely from this pop culture thing of making clowns evil. And it goes back to like killer clowns from outer space. And it's not just pop culture either. Like in real life, the notable American serial killer, John Wayne Gacy, actually went by an alias of Pogo the Clown. Like he went to children's parties and he did all sorts of stuff. And he was quoted in the courtroom as saying the reason he did that is because clowns get away with a lot of things.
They do when you stop and think about it. Let's talk about that kids party thing. Like we have in Kamloops, and I don't think he does it anymore, Uncle Chris the Clown. He would do kids parties. He had his adult act. He'd be out at like the wildlife park during wild lights and Easter and top events. And here you are inviting a complete stranger into your home, often to entertain your children, who is in disguise.
Yeah.
Like, how, in one degree, messed up is that?
Yeah, it really is when you put it that way, and it's funny you mentioned that because Stephen King was interviewed once a while ago about let's be honest, Stephen King created the most iconic scary clown in pop culture history.
Oh, hardcore.
Yeah, like we're talking Pennywise here, right? Like we all float down here, right?
Beep, beep, Richie.
And like even he went on record as saying like, come on guys, we're giving them a bum rap. Like their intentions are good, right? Look at the Robin Williams movie, Patch Adams, like that.
Oh yeah.
Touches the soul, that kind of thing. But there's a laundry list of reasons why people find clowns upsetting, and it's pretty interesting.
Why? This is a bit of an aside. Why do we always call it a laundry list of items? I've done that so many times. with stuff and like news stories I've written and talking to my wife, but it's never a laundry list.
Oh, you know what? You just triggered my need to obsessively research, because now after this is over, I'm going to be like, what is a laundry? Where did that come from? Etymology.com. Let's go.
Sorry, derailed the whole conversation. So
No, not at all. It's actually funny because like the etymology of it is what's fascinating about all this. Like my favorite fact that I found was that Coulrophobia comes from stilt walkers, because like stilt walkers, God, they make me unsettled. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it always make me think of like Slender Man or something.
Or the Wendigo, who's like this long, I've been deep diving into Wendigo lore for about a year now, so it totally comes to my mind too.
Yeah, so you'd be interested in this. There was another study I found, not so much to do with coulrophobia, but it was mentioned in the study I was reading from 2016. And what it was a survey of over 150,000 Americans on what they believed the creepiest occupation that a person could have. And clowns was overwhelmingly number one on the list, even rating above sex shop workers, taxidermists, and morticians.
Wow. Because I would put like a mortician being at the peak. I mean, I'm sure you'd get used to the bodies after a while, but I mean,
right?
Clowns more so. I mean, did they say why? Like, it's just because you wore the makeup and dressed up and stuff?
Well, it just comes down to that whole fact that, 1 in 10 people have a distaste or a fear of clowns. Like that's a massive number.
Yeah, it is. I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around that. So what kind of other things in there struck up with you when you were doing your research? Like, what were some key points that have contributed to this, do you think? And what did you even get a chance to look into, like, what can people do to try to temper this fear of clowns?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, with most phobias, the number one recommended treatment is exposure therapy.
I don't think I could, like I have like a fear of snakes that we're going to talk about in an episode, and there is no way in hell you're putting me in a room full of snakes to overcome this fear of them. Yeah, it's just not happening. So
exactly.
What are you going to do? Put a person who's afraid of clowns in a room full of clowns and just see how that plays out?
It's just going to be like, yeah, let's watch it. We're gonna
and then we'll watch the Simpsons episode with the clown bed, and then we're going to watch Killer Clowns from Outer Space. By then they're traumatized and they're going to put them into 1 South.
It's like me. I have bathophobia. I can't swim in water when I don't see the bottom. And it's just like, what are you going to do with me? Chuck me off a boat?
But you worked on the sea. That's still, like, we've talked about this before. Like, that just to me is, yeah, anyways.
Yeah, I get that a lot. And, when we get to the bathophobia episode, I've got some interesting anecdotes that you're going to enjoy. But
there's actually, remember that line from Jaws? Like, because Brody was afraid of the water. Like, what's a person who's afraid of the water doing living on an island? And it's only an island if you look at it from the water or something like that.
That's what I tell everybody. I'm like, I'm fine on the boat. It's when I'm in the water,
Anyway.
But yeah, so like talk therapy, CBT, exposure therapy, those things are all recommended. And in the study, they talked to all these people who showed extreme levels of reaction, like rising heart rate, the fear of flight, having to run away, et cetera. And they talked to these people and they said, what is it about clowns? Like, why clowns? And some interesting things came up, like makeup and behavior, making them seem not quite human, which interestingly coincides with the same fear occurring in mannequins and dolls.
Okay, I can see that, because I mean, some people are really creeped out by mannequins. And I know, as a paranormal investigator, there's a location called Bailey House that we go to quite frequently. And there's a room in there full of old, like, turn of the century porcelain dolls. And no matter where you sit, they're watching you. And it is unnerving to be in that. You're already peaked and ready for something scary to happen in that room with those dolls.
You know what, man? Again, another plug for you having to come visit my place. But my grandmother used to collect porcelain dolls, and my mom's a hoarder. So we have, like, my grandmother's old room at my house is full of these porcelain dolls that my grandma knitted dresses for and stuff. And my kids always call it the creepy doll room.
Well, that sounds like a creepy doll room, like the room at Bailey House.
Yeah, right. And like, moving on too, there's other things that came up over and over. Like there was the makeup and stuff that they wear hides their emotional signals and makes them unpredictable and unreadable.
Yeah. For sure. Much like wearing a mask does with a person, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And another one that came up that I thought was really interesting is some people reported that the white, red, and black makeup reminded them of death, infection, and disease.
That's interesting. Like, that I have a hard time understanding. Like, is it something just like the mix of those colors together that does it? But I mean, our national flag is red and white. It doesn't seem to make people trip out.
Damn you, Canada, making everyone think about death.
Right? Like, it doesn't seem to happen. I find that's a bit odd. Like, I know with the Freddy Krueger sweater, the green and the red were the two hardest colors to look side by side, which is why Wes Craven chose that. But yeah, I don't get that with the clowns.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, maybe it has something to do with embalming. Like when you think of the idea of a person having that eternal sleep, you think of them almost like pale or whitish.
I guess so.
And I could see red because of blood, and black being, a common color associated with death because of fear of the dark and everything.
Yeah, okay. Too. All right. Okay, why not?
But it mostly had to do with the fact that everything about them seems untrustworthy, unpredictable. You can't read their emotions. The makeup makes their smile look, disproportionately large. And
for sure.
Again, I think going back to the stilt walkers, that's a big part of it is making them look less than human.
That makes sense. Like, and we'll talk about this next episode. Like, when you look at the clowns and the Joker and whatnot, there's just something. Well, and then the behavior supports it, right, of these characters. So we'll get into that next episode. When you talk about the distrust, I mean, is there a fear of politicians? Is there a phobia around politicians?
There is actually.
We'll have to talk about that one sometime. So
I don't know the name of it, but it's technically a fear of leadership and
liars. Well, that's interesting stuff. So what are your thoughts now that you've got, what's kind of going through your head now about clowns? Like, how do you feel about clowns?
Well, and it's interesting, anecdotally, I don't have a problem with them. I've never had a problem with them. I think they're hilarious, and in a sense, maybe it's because I'm a bit of a clown myself.
True.
I've always been that really silly voices and talking like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, but you just got to do that. I mean, come on.
You did the chopper.
The chopper, I got poop on my shoe.
Yeah, I was class clown since I was a kid. And what's funny is my son and my daughter both love clowns. And it's interesting to me because I feel like the reason is because I'm that way. So it was an exposure thing for them growing up, like that unpredictable, oh my God, Dad's going to suddenly tickle me. Oh, what are you doing? Like, why are you slamming me into the couch? WWE style, But my daughter's roommate, I talked to her at length after she told me she had the phobia. And I said, what's your earliest memory about clowns? And she said that she distinctly remembers being in a Walmart with her mom. And she kind of lost her mom and a clown came up to her and stuff. And all she could think of was running away from this clown. And I was just
can I help you, little
girl? Where's your mommy? Here's some Alka-Seltzer spray. I mean, to be fair, good intentions aside, right?
Yeah, that would scar a child for life.
I feel so bad laughing about her story, and I really hope she's not going to be upset at me. But I did ask for her permission to talk about it. And I said, can I tell your story? And she said, oh, yeah, absolutely. Have at it. But it's it's fascinating to me that in some ways it's a learned behavior.
I think, and that's a good point to bring up because like you, I've never been scared of clowns. I don't really like them. More, I think, because of the connotations that we're talking about in the next episode and what, the real life, John Wayne Gacy and stuff like that. But I grew up in a household where humor was encouraged. So I wonder if that plays a part. My grandpa was a really silly guy, kind of thing like that. So I wonder if you kind of grow up in maybe more of a stricter home environment where you're not exposed to silliness and humor and teasing, if you're not used to it, so you're automatically thrown off balance by that behavior.
Yeah, and that was one of my thoughts too. And again, unfortunately, there's very minimal clinical research done on coulrophobia and stuff because it's so recent in the modern world, definitively recent. But in all of the research that I did do, there was a very minimal correlation to learned behavior, to it coming from exposure as a child, et cetera, et cetera. But again, like I said, in my own circles, just my own conversations and anecdotes within my group, You know, like growing up in Barrier, we'd go to the fall fair all the time. And we had the guy that did the rodeo clown at the fall fair was like the most popular guy in town. Everybody loved him. You know, and my best friend's uncle up in Chuchua in the First Nations Reserve was the funniest guy I'd ever met in my life. You know, like we'd be walking on the road and he'd pull his car into the ditch and be like, "Hey, get off the road." You know, like, just crazy, right? Unpredictable. And we loved him for it. But again, like you said, people who didn't have that kind of exposure growing up, maybe that is a big prevailing part of it.
I could see that, right? And you know, someone who takes things far too seriously then is thrown off by people who don't. You know what I mean? Like you kind of see that in workplaces. You know, the person who is the stern disciplinarian, head down, work your ass off, really hates it when the goofy guy comes up and starts talking to him.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and I like to be totally fair, I've kind of gained myself a reputation over the years, and I'm ashamed that I'm going to admit this to the world, but I guess I shouldn't be because I did it already. But I am known as that guy that will cross the line to make everybody laugh. And it goes so far back, you know, like in the Navy, I was known as Moon Sugar Moore. That's a story for another day. But you know, it all had to do with wearing a Hooters shirt that I bought for my wife in a foreign port and cut off shorts on Halloween.
Wow.
Yeah, and I may or may not have entered a cross-dressing pageant on board the ship in a kimono, going by the name Ono Ono.
So yeah, you wouldn't be afraid of clowns at all.
No, because in so many ways, I guess I kind of am one. And again, maybe that's why my kids aren't afraid of them, and why my daughter loves them, and my son thinks they're great. And
Interesting. All right, well I think that's a good stopping point to move into our second episode, which is out next week, where we get into the whole pop culture influence that this coulrophobia has had on the pop. Did I say that right?
Coulrophobia.
Coulrophobia. Fear of clowns. The pop culture side of things coming up next week. Until then, I'm Jason.
And I'm Kenton.
Talk to you then. Do you want to do the laugh one more time?